Miss Gibson is currently the vice president at St. George's High School. She's also spent multiple years in different positions in the international local government leadership for women, and she's also the former chief counselor of the City of Freeport Council. Good afternoon, Miss Frazette Gibson. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how long you've been in education.
This year makes 25 years. I have been to multiple schools. I've dealt with multiple children and educators alike. And I am a happy educator.
Okay, awesome. Glad to hear that. So let's dive right into our first question. How do you define inclusive education?
The word in itself speaks volume when we say inclusive. And so when we talk about inclusive education, we're talking about where all learners, regardless of their backgrounds, their abilities, come together, learn together in the same supportive environment.
Okay, another question. Do you believe all children, including those with disabilities, should learn together in the same classroom environments whenever possible? Why or why not?
Some students require highly specialized instructions, and others may not, which is difficult to deliver in a general classroom. That's one of the things we can discuss. One of the main reasons is insufficient resources. And so if a school doesn't have enough support staff, because when you're dealing with special needs kids, you should have more than one person in the classroom. And so if you don't have the trained support staff that is necessary, or the adaptive tools, an inclusive classroom can become overwhelming either for the teacher or the students. Some learners thrive in quieter classrooms. And in today's learning, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a quiet classroom because you have different personalities. And sometimes the classroom sizes poses a problem as well, where you have 30 to 35 students in a classroom. So imagine having 3 to 4 or 5 students of special needs. How they get the proper training and learning that they need without the right tools, resources, and support staff in the classroom.
What role do you believe teachers play in supporting inclusion?
Teachers can play a variety of roles. By encouraging peer support, I think that will make an extreme difference in terms of peer tutoring, group work, cooperative learning together. And so when you mix the peers together and they're not of the same academics, it assists others in being the best that they can be. The other thing that they can do to reduce barriers in learning is by adjusting the seats and not putting everybody who is so sharp that they sit together.
Yes.
But if we adjust the seatings in the classroom and simplify instructions and not make it so complex that not everybody can understand, and only those that are smart is able to understand. And of course, it offers an alternative way to participate in. So once teachers can do that, I think the sky is the limit. And in terms of just chalk and talk or dry erase markers and the boards, and not even projectors, what about role plays?
Yes.
Adding more active learning into the classroom. And so you may have students of special needs who are more interested in feeling and touching what it is that they're doing, as opposed to just writing and reciting or taking in information.
Yes. Do you think our schools currently have enough resources and training to support inclusive classrooms?
Personally, every school differs. Every island differs in the Bahamas. And so when we talk about it, I think you have to be more specific in terms of which island you're referring to, because those in the family islands will not have the resources that the capital has, which is New Providence. But I think generally we have some common challenges in terms of limited teacher training in the schools, staff shortages in the schools, insufficient funding, I believe, is a very, very challenge.
For sure.
Because, you know, special education programs are expensive. And if you don't have the right resources in terms of funding, how will it support what it is that you need in order to reach those students? And so schools most often have to do pull resources, or, you know, from education budgets too are cut sometimes, not to even consider those who may be in special education. And so the lack of classroom resources, and that also has to do with funding. And so nothing there adds up to how we deal with the resources that is needed for special education. What about the technology that is required for our classrooms, for the students with special education? Sensory tools, accommodations, and so I don't believe that the regular desk and chair should be with the kids sitting all the time. Why not have those big bean bags, and then you can also have the what we call these
Noise cancelling headphones.
Headphones. What can have them focus on something, and so you can change how they learn. But you have to have the resources, the financial resources, in order to purchase the things that are necessary. And so in the Bahamas, no, we don't have.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the greatest barriers to inclusive education in the Bahamas today?
One of the main barriers is limited training for teachers. I don't think we have the resources or the personnel for special education, especially outside of New Providence. It shows in terms of the instructions that are taught. We have inadequate resources and infrastructure. We have oversize in classrooms. That also is a barrier to inclusive education to special needs kids. And I think another barrier is that you don't know that the child has special education or need to be cultivated differently.
Yes.
Because they have not been tested.
Yes.
So I think one of the main reasons and one of the mainest barriers we have is that child necessary for a general classroom, or do that child need to be tested to be in a special classroom?
What types of support do you believe is needed to improve inclusive schooling? Examples can be funding, training, staffing, or infrastructure.
I'm glad you say infrastructure. So one of the things I'll talk about is the physical and environmental support. And so even with inclusive training and special education, we have students who are disabled. And with disabled, you require certain formats in order to get into the classroom.
Yes.
And so what I noticed in the Bahamas, we may have staircases, but no elevators, no ramps.
Right.
That students can have access to get properly to the class. And I know this from experience. I would have dealt with like 3 students who would have had one leg, but they would use their crutches and get up those flights of stairs and eventually graduated from those high schools. And I thought that was very commendable.
Wow. It is.
We don't do enough in terms of our physical structure, which includes that we need to have the finances in order to create these avenues so that the children can be adaptive in every avenue to learn.
What do you believe is the government's responsibility in ensuring every child has access to inclusive education?
Well, the government must ensure that all children, regardless of disabilities, backgrounds, or ability, can attend school. That's one. Laws and policies are to be put into place, but are they going to be enforced? Is the question. The government's duty is also to provide adequate funding, where you fund schools so that they can hire enough special education teachers and support staff, have enough technology that the children can have access to. And of course, we have to support teacher training and professional development so that learning, even for the teachers, can be ongoing.
Yes.
We have to ensure schools have qualified educators in that area. That's a must. Set standards for teachers so that they are prepared for inclusive education. I think that's paramount to anything. Because to have the teachers there that are properly trained means nothing. And so, even for some schools, I think we ought to hire enough education support, guidance counselors who are trained, speech therapists that are needed. And so we need all the qualified special educators in order to facilitate what it is what we need to do.
How would you support teachers and schools to implement inclusive practices if elected in your current role?
I would support teachers in schools to implement inclusive practices by focusing on 4 key areas. Reducing administrative burdens, I think is key to allow teachers to focus on their students.
What is your vision for inclusive education in the Bahamas in the next 5 to 10 years?
When we travel internationally, we see things that we don't offer in the Bahamas that I think can benefit us. And so one of those is where education does not stop on the high school level. If we can implement where our special needs students benefit beyond the classroom in terms of how to live a normal life, how to cook, where education for them is continuous, despite their age. I think that is important. That will help and affect a lot of families. Because it is at that point when I think the frustration comes into being, when they have no other alternative for their students, their kids to go.
So just another general question. How do you feel about testing? When you talk about children that learn differently, what about when it's time to assess what they really know? Do you think that the standard testing that we have still applies and would work in all of these different cases?
Do you think testing works at all?
No, not very efficiently.
No. I don't agree to testing. I'll give an example of myself. I always freeze when I came to do a test. But if I would speak orally to the teacher, you could match me. But anytime a paper's in front of me, for some reason I just freeze. Is that a true assessment of a student? I don't think so.
I can agree. If there was one immediate change you could make to support inclusion in our schools, what would it be and why?
Providing universal access, I think, would be one of the most immediate changes that's necessary to differentiate learning resources. And so, for example, using materials that cater to diverse learning styles. reading levels, because you can be in one class, but every child maybe read at a different level and not at that level in which the class that they're in. So you would need the resources in order to accommodate that. Why would this work? So that we can ensure that all students learn at the level of the curriculum, that are engaged with the curriculum at their own level, if you have the resources necessary. It reduces the barriers in terms of learning, which is true. So if you have multiple resources that affect different learning abilities, you reduce barriers for students who have learning disabilities. And also it forces a classroom culture that is needed, that is necessary, where diversity in learning is recognized. And it's recognized as a strength, not a challenge. So having the right resources that is necessary, even if it's tablets and headphones, children learn differently. And so if you have multiple resources that they can adapt to, there'll be no barriers. Because this group reach out a different way than the other group. And if we want to be honest, in the Bahamas, you can assign specific classroom and just caters to those students with those needs, rather than having them in a general classroom.